Hello, I'm M.K.Davis. A couple of years ago, I made a trip out to a place called Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. I was really interested in, I'd heard a lot about the Native American culture out there and some of the remarkable ruins that were along the cliff sides out there in Chaco Canyon, New Mexico. And I went out there for myself to look at them because they've attracted a lot of attention from people who recognized that these were of unusual quality and unusual in the sense of the complex way it was built. I did an extensive photographic survey while I was out there, and I've been reviewing some of my photographs, and I thought I'd share some of my thoughts with you on that, and also some of the imagery from out there in Chaco Canyon where these remarkable people lived. Let's start with entrance into the area. I was surprised to see that it was a World Heritage Site, which essentially means that it's under the jurisdiction of the United Nations. And that's a whole other story. But anyway, this is as we went in, and just kind of from at a distance, some of the dwellings, they say dwellings. I don't see them as being habitation myself, but we'll get into that later. But anyway, here's some of the pieces of the walls and stuff. And all this was originally buried. It was dug up by National Geographic and several universities and individuals that went out there and spent time actually uncovering this. But it was originally, underground. You see, some of these things are kind of unexplainable. They're too small to be a functioning window. I don't know what that's for. Here, there were timbers built into the walls as well. And these timbers came from quite a distance away. They said it came from a mountain forest over 100 miles away. Here's some timbers that were built into the walls. The timbers survive quite well, actually, in the arid climate. But you see, this is quite a remarkable achievement as far as construction goes. I mean, it's very well done. And now the next question you ask is why? Why was it so much time and energy put into this? Well, the general idea was that they were living here, but it doesn't really look like a dwelling. It looks more like it was some kind of a building. Some of them were quite tall, but with nothing inside to indicate that there were floors. See how tall this was? They say this originally went up 5 stories. And you see those windows and up there, I guess you call them windows, but they're offset from where a window would normally be. And there's one window in the corner. Don't really know. I think that they don't really know or understand fully what these buildings were or what they were used for. Sometimes, it's just easier just to say they were living there, but something else was going on there. You see where some of these timbers had been subjected to heat or fire. I think I got another picture coming up there. It's close up. You see where they've been charred. And then there's another one coming up here in a wall here that was charred actually in the wall itself. And like it was the wall itself had gotten hot. So quite a bit of heat there. Whatever happened, there's really not that much timber in it to be burning. You wonder how. And some of this stuff has been filled in. Like they filled in this with like rubble, rocks, and what it was originally going to, I don't know. And you can see the remnants of some plaster that they used on the inside walls. Most of it being stripped out, but some of it's still there. Now this is what they call a Keva. And to me, it looks like everything else was built around these Kevas, like they were in support of whatever was going on in the Kevas. You see, within the Kevas, there are structures that are built. See, against this wall here. And it was like it was supporting something. The Kevas being completely round. And you got to remember that the Kevas, too, were buried. You see all the buttresses? These Kevas have buttressed supports. The wall is not only just really thick, but they also have support from buttresses on the outside. So what they were supporting in the kivas was a significant amount of force on those walls. And look, you see right here, they got a ring in there, and they got little supports on the ring. Now here's one it's not even completely uncovered. And there's what I was telling you. It's got those supports as if something sat down on there. And we'll get to it later. Take a look at the outside of this wall, and you'll see support pegs, but they're in a spiral pattern, spiraling up the wall from right to left. You see a double wall on this kiva in several places. You're really not sure what you're looking at, but it has the see the structure there. The structure's there. It has gives me the impression that it's like some kind of industrial complex. Like its whole supports are there to hold something heavy. See the double wall right here. The double wall around the kiva. What's that for? It's too hard a work to be just building it because there had to be a reason. Here's another kiva. See the buttressed wall right here in the foreground? And then there was just like a drain. See, it's like a T-shaped drain coming out of there. And there, along one of the walls there, you see clearly they have marked a spot and made a dimple of some sort for something to fit in a socket. Now you see in the bottom of the kivas, see the structures that are built there? And you see these squares all the way around. This is like if they had access to metal, this might look like something out of industry. But still, it has that look, like something sat down inside the kiva that was heavy and sat on those structures. Maybe even doweled into them. That's why, it's too simplistic to say that this was just whole grain, that they just held their foodstuffs in here. They wouldn't need anything like what you see on the floor of this kiva if all they had in here was corn. And the amount of work that went into the wall of this thing, and all the buttressing and everything. See the buttresses right there? Now look right here. You're going to see something really strange and unusual. You're going to see a log built into this wall, and actually there were two logs at one time. This wall had suffered significant damage, and when they buttressed it, they did it at an angle, which kind of indicated that they were buttressing against torque and not radial pressure, as if something were pressing on the walls of these kivas at an angle, like a spring, like torquing around on those walls. And whenever the wall gave way there, they reinforced it with wood. But this wood is buttressed at an angle, directly against some kind of torque. There's another look at the kivas there, one of the kivas. And there's many kivas that are still buried. You can see the tops, the rims, but they haven't been dug out. So this complex is quite a bit bigger than even shows here. Now we're going to get on to some of the petroglyphs, and that's some of the more interesting stuff. Just take a look. There was quite a bit of these zigzag lines, and I know anthropologists say that represents a snake, but I'm not totally convinced of that. One reason is because of things like this. See right here, you see this? It looks like a device. It's got the line down through it and the little bubbles on all the way down. See right here's another one of the zigzags. And you know, they got sharp edges, sharp points on the tops and bottoms. You know, the hills and valleys of this zigzag. Here's what they call an anthropomorph. It's a figure of a person alongside the zigzag, and the zigzag is bigger than the person. Here's some spirals, and I think the spirals are going to be significant. In a little bit, we'll discuss some more on them. Here's another spiral. All right, now here's a spiral that's quite different. Look up here. There's two different lines coiled together into a coil, and then they have their own coils out at the end. And that looks familiar. It looks like something I've seen before. Now, we'll get into that later. Now, this looks like a device of some kind, and it's attached to a coil. A little enhancement makes it a little easier to see. These are symbols of some kind, and they're technological symbols. You see the zigzag coming out of a coil. And there's another anthropomorph right there beside it, and it shows the man, and the coil is bigger than the man, and the zigzag is bigger than the man. Now here's something that might actually represent, be a drawing of a Keva. And this is pretty interesting once you get it enhanced to where you can see it. Okay, now what you see there is the dish shape, the bowl shape of the Keva, and then you see a pyramid rising up out of the Keva with three sides there. And all of this is drawn over a much older petroglyph. See, there's a petroglyph of an animal there that's much older than what's scratched on there now. So whoever scratched that did so at a much later time. They scratched over an older petroglyph. So these symbols that appear to be showing technological type things or don't seem to be as old as some of the other symbols that show animals and things like that. So it's like this technology moved in, and the Kevas were built, and then everything you see around them were like in support of whatever was going on in those Kevas. Now take a look at this one. Look at the individual. There's a petroglyph there, a drawing of an individual holding a coil, and a whole bunch of animals and stuff all around him. Look at this coil very closely. Look at the very center of the coil, and you'll see that it's turned in on itself and a bar drawn straight across the center. And that looks very familiar to me. You know, almost everything else up there is quite natural. You see animals of all types, and there's no misinterpretation there that these animals didn't represent anything particular other than animals to these people. But then you have this coil. This guy's holding this coil in his hand that looks so much like what we use today are known as torsion springs. And I'll show you an example. Here's a torsion spring right here. You see it's got that same bend across the middle that actually dogs off on one of the things that's to be torqued. And so I'll just put it up again right beside the petroglyph. And you can see that bar across the middle is a perfect match. So it begs to question, what does this mean? Did they have a use for torsion springs? Now here look at this spring that we had seen earlier. Take a look at it compared to the picture of the torsion spring. It's almost a pretty good match there. Going back to that representation of a Keva with the pyramid in it, I can't help but wonder, that there are certain materials that if you were to put them in a bind by the use of a spring or some kind of outside force, that they would actually produce electricity, and this is called a piezoelectric effect, and that if something large enough that had that unique property. Something that was crystalline in nature, like quartz or some other type of crystal. It may be perhaps in the shape of a pyramid, like you see here, received down into that Keva and then torqued with some kind of a special spring of some type that kept constant pressure on it. It would produce electricity, and a static charge would collect on the sharp edges of the pyramid and collect on the sharp tip of the crystal. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with how they make sandpaper, but they essentially put sand in a matrix of glue, and then they put a static charge over the top, and the static charge will collect on the sharp edges of the sand grains and make the sharp edges stand straight up. A static charge always collects on sharp points, which is why a pyramid is the perfect collector of a static charge. So if you had a piezoelectric anything, whatever material it is, and you torqued it, then all the electricity that it produced, if it were in the shape of that pyramid, would collect at the tip, and then perhaps be discharged to wherever you want to take it for whatever reason you're using it. Not that it all actually happened this way, but it certainly has the appearance of something technological. And there does appear to be some petroglyphs on these walls that contain symbols that appear to be technological in nature, perhaps even electrical in nature. Take a look at some of these. Look up there, the upper left there, those two squares there. They have what appears to be a coil between the two lines of the square that come to the center. You can see it in the enlargement there. It's got that electrical symbol of a coil or some type of a transformer, perhaps. And then there's other symbols too. Look, these right here look like symbols that are perhaps could be electrical in nature. In the inset is a symbol of a sine wave, high and low frequency troughs and peaks and valleys. Could that be a symbol that we see there chiseled into the rock of a similar thing? And here again is a coil with a sine wave or an electrical discharge emanating from it, and a small figure of a person there. Well, you know, it's a very special place, Chaco Canyon, and we may never know exactly what went on there. But it certainly appears that, you know, something took place technological there. But whatever it was, it appears that it was abandoned and covered over, and whoever was there went on to other things. But anyway, a very fascinating place. I thank you for your time.